Hello, welcome once again to Prosa com Bertaglia. It has been an honor to bring seven good people to share their experiences and knowledge. And today's talking is about evolution of supply chain leadership. The last 2 years have been uncertain, complex, and difficult. Most supply chain leaders have struggled to produce impressive results. The continued disruptions have resulted in inefficiencies, ineffectiveness, and poor customer satisfaction. The role of supply chain leaders has become the toughest job in this level. The role was much more oriented to reaction, very tactical, and managing rather than leading. It's important to look ahead based on lessons pandemic has left. Businesses were radically changed. Let us think of the hard moments, challenges, and what we have ahead for supply chain leadership here at Prosa com Bertaglia or Talking with Bertaglia. And it is my privilege to bring to this show my longtime friend, Jim Tompkins. Jim, my friend, welcome to Prosa com Bertaglia. I'm very glad having you here with me in this show, Jim. So let me start asking you a difficult question. Who is Jim Tompkins?
Oh, Paulo, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much. And that's not too difficult. I've known myself for a long time. My background is very boring, really. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and my mom was a bank teller. My dad was a house painter. None of my family had ever gone to college before. I didn't do well in high school. I was a big athlete. I did cross country and wrestling, and I was a high jumper. And so very athletically inclined, but not so good with the books. I applied to Purdue University as I graduated from high school, and they said no. So I had to go to another school. I went to Northern Illinois University, and I studied pre-engineering. And as a junior, I did get into Purdue. And so I went to Purdue in 1966, and I stayed at Purdue until 1972. I got my bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, my master's degree in industrial engineering, and my PhD in industrial engineering from Purdue. When I left Purdue, I had an opportunity, not one I chose, but one that I was given, to join the Army. And I went to the Army for 3 years, and I had a great experience and was able to put to work the studies I had at Purdue. When I left the Army in 1975, I went to NC State as a professor, thinking that I was going to make my livelihood for the rest of my life teaching at the university. I also started on the side a little consulting business, a little business called Tompkins International. 3 years later, my wife told me, she says, Jim, your part-time income is 6 times larger than your full-time income. And so not doing what my wife told me, but I did what my wife told me, and I quit the university and I went full-time at Tompkins International. The business grew. We started doing warehousing, and then we added transportation, and then inventory, and then network planning. In 1985, we added the whole technology suite, warehouse management systems, transportation management systems, S&OP. We did work in order management. We did the whole suite. In 1999, we added material handling integration, and so we could design the facility and then implement the solution. We moved forward in 2005 and created our first global supply chain practice. We worked around the world. We opened an office in Brazil. We opened an office in Argentina, Australia, China, Europe, in Canada, Mexico. The business expanded. We were really doing well. In 1915, we started a fulfillment business for e-commerce. In 2017, we added the robotics business. And so this was all within the umbrella of Tompkins International. When we started the robotics business, I sold 35% of the company to a Chinese firm. We worked with them very successfully until 2020 when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it hurt us very hard. And the decision was made that we needed to reduce staff. I said, if we're going to reduce staff, I'll be the first to go. So I resigned from my own company, and so we could save more jobs for the people. And I went and I started a new company, a company called Tompkins Ventures, where Tompkins Ventures did not do consulting and implementation, but instead what we were is a connector, where we found someone with a problem, we found someone with a solution, and we connected them. We did this in 5 areas. The first area we did it is industrial development, where we literally built buildings. The second area we did was raising capital. And so there's a company that is growing but needs capital. We find the capital for them so they can continue to grow. The third is in logistics, where we literally move the products around the world. In the fourth quarter of 2021, we did $36 million worth of ocean freight that we moved around the country. So big business we had. We then added a practice in technology, where we look at supply chain resilience and reverse logistics and supply chain visibility, and we look at the full supply chain suite. And then the last practice is the practice of leadership. This was the business we had until just a month ago, when a month ago, we started a new consulting business and a new integration business. So we've brought back the old business inside the new, and now at Tompkins Ventures, this is what we're doing. So who I am, I'm a supply chain guy that loves innovation, that loves creativity, and I really enjoy helping clients improve their supply chain.
Oh, great, great, Jim. And the first book about in supply chain was yours, the Distribution Management Handbook. A great book, is a kind of a Bible in 1998, if I can recall correctly. Jim, my friend, what's impact of the last 2 years on supply chain?
Oh, wow, Paulo. It almost destroyed the supply chain. It's been 2 years of disruptions, 2 years of, I went back when COVID happened, when it started impacting supply and then impacting demand and then impacting lead times. I said, oh my goodness, there's never been a time in history there was so much changing at once. And so I went back to look in history and said, when was the time when we had this much disruption to what we were doing? And I went back, and it was the late 80s when the Berlin Wall fell, when the Soviet Union fell, and there was this upheaval. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And so a group hired the United States Army Corps of Strategic People, and they came up with a word, VUCA. The word VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Really, year 2020 was VUCA. The first thing that happened is the virus hit China, and that closed down the factory of the world. And so everybody in the world, in Brazil, in the United States, everybody couldn't get components. So our factories were closed because the suppliers came from China. But then China, they got themselves out of the deep COVID, and they started to export product again, but they also exported what? COVID. And COVID traveled around the world. It traveled in airplanes. The products traveled by the ship. And so the COVID arrived before the products did. And when COVID arrived, that affected demand. And so now we have the supply impacted by what happened at the factory of the world. And now we have demand that's impacted. And so what we have is no ability to accomplish the objective of supply chain. What is the objective of supply chain? It's to synchronize supply to demand. Well, demand is uncertain, supply is uncertain, and so the supply chain didn't work. And so the way I like to think about it is with something I call EERR. The first E, took place when we invented the term supply chain, which is 1992, all the way to year 2000, and that E stood for efficiency. And so our goal in supply chain was to take cost out, to increase efficiency, to make the operation work better. So that was up until 2000. And then from 2000 up until about 2005, 2010, what we had was effectiveness. And effectiveness said, we're not just trying to take cost out, we're trying to improve our sales. We're trying to give customers better service. We're trying to deliver quicker. And so now what we have is efficiency followed by effectiveness. But then as we went through the 21st century, we got to the point where COVID hit. And when COVID hit, all of a sudden, everyone started talking about supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. My wife came in this office I'm sitting in now, and she sat on the other side of my computer, and she came in and she had sat down. My wife never comes in here and sits down. I thought, oh my goodness, what did I do? I must have. Did I forget to take the trash out? Did I leave the refrigerator? What did I do? I thought I did something wrong. And then she smiles and she says to me, she says, congratulations. I said, well, thank you. I says, what did I do? She says, I've been married to you for 50 years. And I've tried to explain to our kids, to our grandkids, to my friends, to I try to explain to everyone, what is supply chain? No one has a clue what supply chain is. She said, but now all of a sudden, because of COVID and because of the disruptions, everyone's watching the news and talking about supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. She said, so what we have done, she says, she's my girlfriends are calling me and saying, is that what Jim does? He does the supply chain? So he's the one that gets us the toilet paper? He's the one that gets us the Coca-Cola to the stores? That's marvelous. I understand what Jim does now. So in 2020, we got respect. And we got respect as a profession of supply chain. So it's an exciting time to be in supply chain as opposed to the early days. But then what we found, because of the difficulty with balancing supply to demand, we had a real problem in resilience. We didn't have the ability to make the supply chain work. And so what we found in 2000 and 2021 were supply chains where supply and demand didn't match. We had demand, but the store shelves were empty. We had supply. We had a whole bunch of this product that was going to be sold to hotels. We were going to be sold to restaurants, but all the restaurants and hotels were sold. So there we just built huge piles of inventory that we didn't really need. And so what we see is the phases: efficiency, effectiveness, and then respect, and then resilience. EERR. That's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. And the impact of COVID has been huge, but it's been good for supply chain because we've become more respected and we understand our job better than we ever did before. So it's a great time to be in supply chain.
Wow, fantastic, Jim. Jim, one thing you are talking about the supply chain, basically transformation in these last 2 years. But what kind of, or what sort of impact this transformation made in our own leadership in the last 2 years, Jim?
Oh, wow. The leadership, it began in, there was three trends, three things. Number one, e-commerce exploded. E-commerce just increased in sales. We had 20, 30, 40% growth in e-commerce in March and April and May of 2020. So e-commerce exploded. And so that changed our business and that changed what we did. The second thing that happened is that we had everyone working from home. Okay, instead of going to work, we had now people staying home, and that changed the demand for products. Airplanes was nothing, hotels were nothing, and so we had delivery to the home required, and so there was these huge changes, and then the tremendous role of the staying at home and the e-commerce resulted in the requirements of supply chain changing, and it became a whole new ballgame. Unfortunately, supply chain leadership was not ready. What happened, in fact, is instead of playing offense and defense, when COVID hit, we only played defense. Instead of being proactive and reactive, we were just reactive. And so instead of providing leadership, what we did instead is we managed the problems. We had lots of problems. The inventory wasn't there. We had too much inventory. Transportation didn't work. Transportation cost too much. And so there was this havoc going on. It was crazy. And so what management did is they tried to solve problems. Let's fix this problem. Let's fix this problem. Let's fix this problem. Well, what happened is for 2 years, all we did was fix problems. That's reactive. That's defense. We weren't playing offense. We weren't being proactive. And so what we now find ourselves in is a position where we don't have plans for improving the business. We're not innovating. We're not being creative. And in fact, all we're trying to do is maintain the status quo. And that is a major, major problem. We find people today arguing, was just in time wrong? Should we go back to just in case? Well, no, you shouldn't go back to just in case, because that had huge inventory and huge cost impacts. But now just in time didn't work so well. So what do we need to do? We need to build just in time that's resilient, that has the ability to really operate over time. So leadership today is totally different than it was back in 2019. And between 2020 and 2021, we didn't do leadership, we did management. And so now we're starting to get back into really providing the offense, the strategy, the proactiveness of what we want to be successful as a company. So it's exciting time because we really got our competitive juices flowing again, and we really want to really improve the business for the customers.
Wow, what a fantastic explanation, Jim. I like it so much. Jim, let us grab a cup of coffee right now, and we will get back soon. Can we?
Good. Yes, awesome.
Hey, Jim, what a fantastic show. So let us move on. And the following question, Jim, is what is the path forward for supply chain? Because we have a lot of challenges in terms of labor, strategy, technology. What could you say?
Well, a good thing to kind of talk about, Paulo, is the approach we take here. And I could talk about ants, I could talk about grasshoppers, and I could talk about caterpillars. And someone says, what are we talking about bugs for? Well, let's talk about bugs. If you look at a baby ant, and then you look at an adult ant, what you see is they're the same, they're only bigger. But it's the ant and the ant, you look at them, they're exact same, they're just bigger. There is no metamorphosis. In fact, that is called anti-metamorphosis. It's ametroboly, is the type of bug an ant is. Now, to the contrary, a grasshopper, if you look at a baby grasshopper and you look at an adult grasshopper, it's bigger, but it's also different. It has wing sockets and wings in the adult. It has reproductive organs in the adult. In the baby, there's not little sockets and little reproductive, there's none, it's nothing. And so what you have is a semi-metroboly, a partial transformation. Okay, and so the grasshopper kind of looks alike, but they have changed, they're different. There's a metamorphosis there. But then think about the caterpillar. Here is a caterpillar, a little worm that crawls around the dirt on his stomach. And one night he goes to bed and he falls asleep and he wakes up in the morning and he's in this cocoon and he thinks, where am I? What's happening? And so he eats the cocoon and he comes out and he looks and he says, I have wings, and he flies off. And so this little dust-sucking worm is now this beautiful butterfly. And the children chase, oh, butterfly, butterfly, how pretty he is. That's a holometroboly. Holo is Latin for a total metamorphosis. It's a whole new thing. So when we're talking about the path forward for supply chain, it is a holometroboly. It is a whole new thing. So we need to think like butterflies. We need to think about how things are different. You mentioned some of the items that are different. Certainly labor. My goodness, we have a huge shortage of labor. We can't find people to get the work done. And so what is that an opportunity for? It's an opportunity for automation and robotics. So a huge difference. Where we used to look at that from a return on investment point of view, we're now looking at it both from a return on investment, but also from the point of view of being able to get the work out. And so the labor shortage is a huge topic. There's another topic with respect to nearshoring. What we're finding is that Brazil, which used to be a great source of shoes, became second to China because China was doing all the shoes. But then President Trump puts a 25% tariff on shoes from China. Now it makes the Brazilian shoes great quality and now great price. And we can get from Brazil to the United States twice as quick as you can get from China to the United States. And so we're now exporting shoes from Brazil again, like we did in the past. And so we're nearshoring. Some people say the US should nearshore to Mexico. Not necessarily. Mexico's out of capacity. And so we looked at the next best choice. Who's the next best choice? Brazil. Furniture. Great furniture manufactured in Brazil. Let's export it to the United States. Let's import it into the United States. So the nearshoring topic is changing. There's a nearshoring topic changing with respect to ports. We're working on a new port in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic, if you look at it, if you go into the Panama Canal, you go right past the Dominican Republic. If you go from if you go from Rio up to New York, what do? You go right past Dominican Republic. It's a great location for a new port. And then if we store the product in Dominican Republic, we can pick it and pack it. We can get it to Miami in 2 hours. We can get it to New Jersey in 4 hours. We can put in the order today and we can deliver it tomorrow from the Dominican Republic to you in the Northeast or the Southeast of the United States. And so huge impacts on nearshoring, on transportation, ports, on robotics, and then a huge, huge, huge impact on technology. You know, we used to call it supply chain management. I don't even call it that anymore, because a chain indicates a series of links,
Mm-hmm.
and links are connected one to the next, to the next, to the next. I want this link to know what everyone before them and everyone after is doing. And so I really don't want to talk about links of a chain. I want to talk about a network. And so we want to create software that is a digital supply network where everyone in the entire network has real-time visibility of everything that's going to your supplier, all the way back. And then I want to know what's going on with my customer, my customer's customer, all the way. So I want end-to-end real-time visibility. Now I can really make that supply chain perform according to the requirements, and I could respond to the disruptions which are occurring. So major, major, major changes are taking place in what's going on. Now, what that tells us is that we need to understand as leaders, disruption is going to continue. Look at the disruption in the world today because Russia decided to invade the Ukraine. Huge disruptions. We're finding disruptions because we're not getting the raw materials out of there, but we're also finding because of all the embargoes and all the sanctions that we're not getting the product out, and Russia or Ukraine isn't shipping out. So what we need to have is a supply chain that's agile, that can make changes based upon what really happens. We want to talk about not optimizing the supply chain, but optionizing the
Mm-hmm.
supply network. Okay, optionality. I'm a PhD industrial engineer, so my profession says I want to optimize solutions. But optimizing doesn't give me the flexibility to change when I need to. So instead of optimizing, I'm optionizing. And I think that's really, really, really critical. I think where we look at where supply chain is going, it's going to be a balance between proactive and reactive, between tactical and strategy. It's going to be a balance between cost and service. And so what we need to do is look at how do we balance this supply network in a way that we can satisfy the customer and still be profitable as a company. That's the opportunity going forward. And so it's an exciting time to be in supply chain leadership.
Wow, great, great. And Jim, one thing that calls my attention here is I heard that you wrote basically 30 or 31 books, and your last book is at the Amazon because the faster launching that you can see when you go to Amazon. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because this is the true supply chain, right?
Well, the new book is called Insightful Leadership. And what it's saying is that we can't just sit back and wait for disruptions to happen to us. What we have to do is we have to anticipate what are the disruptions, and then we got to project what are the things that we can do. What is the foresight that we can have to decide how to drive the company so we can get ahead of the competition? So right now, Amazon is certainly a leader in the world, although last quarter they lost money for the first time in about 7 years. And so why did they lose money? Well, what they saw is that the growth isn't as much as it used to be. And so their business model is based upon grow, 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 grow. And but what's happening is other activities are taking place that are taking volume away from them. And so what we need to do is have insight into how do we do both in store and online shopping and retailing across the board. And I think that's really a great opportunity for companies to look at the total customer needs and say, how can we fulfill the requirements if it's in store or if it's online? Either way, we need to make that happen. And I think that's an exciting opportunity to have insight into the future and to allow us to get ahead of our competition.
Yeah, I brought this case just because it's a proper example that you have. You wrote the book, and instead of going to a publisher, you went to Amazon.
Yes.
Because this, and we are talking about agility. So
Yes.
the digital world and the agility, and this was a great example about this.
Yeah,
And
all these books back here, those are some of my books, and they took from the time I got done writing until the time I had a book 12 months. With Amazon, from the time I get done writing until the time I have a book is 2 months. And so, and then also, since it's print on demand, if I want to update the book in September, I want to put something new about what happened in Ukraine and Russia, I can put that in the book. And 48 hours after I finish writing it, boom, it's in the new book. So really talking about optionality, talk about speed and agility, that's what we have with Amazon. And it's really awesome from a publishing point of view, what we can do. Right on.
And going back to the VUCA word, you just mentioned it in the beginning of our talking here, everything is going or is happening so fast. If you take 1 year to write the book, 1 year to publish the book, to launch the book, so things change a lot. So that's interesting. And one thing that I would like to bring to our conversation here, Jim, is what kind of tips do you have? How can I say that? What kinds of tips do you have for leadership as disruption is not going to stop?
Well, what we need to do is we have to go back to insightful leadership, and we have to say, okay, what are the impacts of these disruptions and what are the future disruptions that are going to take place? And how can I respond to those before they happen? I like the analogy of surfing, because what you need to do is you need to watch when the wave is coming. And when the wave is coming, you need to get up on it and ride the power of the wave. But if what you do is you drop off the wave and you just sit there, what's going to happen? The next wave is going to come and knock you off your board. And so you need to realize they are waves of disruption coming. The new normal is disruption. And so what we need to do is ride the wave and then go back out and ride the next wave. And that's the analogy for bringing about a reinvention of the organization so that we're ready for the next wave when it comes.
Wow, great. And the other thing I'd like to bring to our conversation here is, Jane, you mentioned that during the pandemic period, people were much oriented to reactive and tactical characteristics. And normally, when you see people talking about this situation, mainly for leadership or not just in supply chain, you need to be proactive, you need to be strategic, you need to be a leader. And you mentioned that people need to be reactive and proactive, tactical and strategic, managing
Yes.
and leading, playing defense and offense. How?
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Because you are playing with both situations. It's a kind of antithesis.
Well, if we think about a soccer game, if all you do is play defense, the best you can do is have a 0-0 tie. Okay, so defense is very important. Okay, but if all we do is defense, we will lose. And so what we need to do is we need to play defense and offense. There's some teams we play where we have to work harder on offense. Some teams we play, we have to work harder on defense. But what we need to do is understand that business requires this balance between offense and defense, between management and leadership, between tactics and strategy. I would suggest we did so much tactical, so much defense for the last 2 years. We really have to work hard on strategy and offense today because we've let it go without any real renewal, real excitement moving forward. And it's time now to really play offense.
Oh, great, great, great. Jim, we had a conversation recently when you came to Brazil. Was fantastic, your presence, your visit to Brazil. And if you can give some advice to Brazilian people, mainly in the supply chain or supply network area, what would be your advice?
Well, I think the advice goes back to the basics of people, process, and technology. In Brazil right now, there's a lot of log tech, logistics technology companies that are doing fantastic work. And it's really exciting to see the innovations that are coming from Brazil. At the same time, there's great companies in Brazil that are starting to improve their logistics, improve their operations, and providing great customer service to their customers. So I really see Brazil is at the leader in South America. I see them as a partner of the United States in North America. South America has Brazil, North America has the United States. The United States and Brazil should be partners. I didn't come to Brazil because I kind of randomly wanted to enjoy the weather. I came to Brazil because it should be the great partner of the United States of America, and the two should work together, where Brazil plays its role and the US plays its role, and we work together. I'm enjoying working with some log tech companies in Brazil and helping them come to the United States. It's exciting opportunity, and it's really great technology that we can use globally. And so I think the advice for a young person in supply chain is get broad and get deep. The reason I'm still doing supply chain after all these years is because no matter what I'm doing, I'm always learning more. There's all more breadth. There's always more depth of more topics I need to understand and more understanding of those topics and deeper. And so this is a great field for folks to get into. For those of us spending in 20, 30, 40 years, there's still opportunities for Paulo and Jim to still learn and to continue to improve what we're doing.
That's right. That's right. Jim, my friend, we are finishing our Prosa with Bertaglia, our talking with Bertaglia. It was really a pleasure to have you here. Fantastic knowledge sharing. I admire you, Jim. We met each other, I would say, 1998. So long ago in the United States. It was
I was only 9 years old then, right?
I was 4.
Love it.
Okay,
love it.
Jim, my friend, nice to have you here. I really appreciate your participation and the contribution to the people that follow Prosa with Bertaglia or Talking with Bertaglia. Thank you so much, Jim.
Paulo, my pleasure. Thank you so much. Good talking with you. All the best.
Hugs from Brazil, my friends. And to infinite and beyond. And what we do in life echoes in eternity. Bye, Jim. Thank you so much.
Now.
Ao infinito e